The Oakland A's are the best team in baseball this July so far.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans, and welcome to Locked On A's, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about your Oakland A's all season long. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, by all means, call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and this is my sixth full season here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and my first hosting Locked On A's. I also host Locked On MLB of 5 days a week as well. So if you like what I'm doing here, you get me 10 times a week. Actually, the Locked On Podcast Network, this week you're getting me 11 times because I appeared on Locked On Sports Today earlier today. And who knows, I think I'm probably going to give you 6 episodes of Locked On MLB. So it's going to be, it's a Sully cornucopia that you're going to have here on Locked On, the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, all 4th of July week long. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Hopefully it's not our last. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter and Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Booking.com, or is it Booking? Yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Yeah. I wasn't sure if I was going to do a podcast tonight, but when you have such a fun game like we had tonight, you're darn right I'm doing a podcast today. By the way, A's fans, I want you to understand there's a concept, and some teams have this concept. The A's have won 2 games in a row, and that is called a winning streak. And that's a good thing. This is the first time the A's have won back-to-back games. They won back-to-back games against Kansas City last month. So I guess that was the last time. But wow, it's been a while since there's been a game that's felt this good. And this is coming off the heels of the game. The first game against Arizona was a lot of fun. The game on not tonight's game, but the game before, when the A's won against the Angels, and the Rooker home run, and they got a good solid performance out of Spence, and they brought in Mason Miller. It wasn't at its best, but that was a fun game last night. It's always fun to win the first game of a series, but holy Toledo, this was everything firing on all cylinders. This was the kind of A's game you ask a genie for. First of all, let's for the time of game, it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. Hell, you can't get a comic book movie beginning to end that quick. But you had the A's were being smarter and getting to the right bases and throwing to the right place better than the Angels were. The first A's run came from an error by the pitcher. And there was a lot of bad mistakes made by the Angels, including overrunning a foul ball, and it just was, they just played sloppy. And how refreshing it is to see someone playing sloppy against the A's. But the offense, it wasn't just a couple of solo home runs and cross your fingers and grit your teeth. They did have a home run by Schumann, hit a home run, and Rooker hit a home run. It's amazing that Rooker only has 17 home runs. It doesn't feel like we should be on Roger Maris watch with him by the number of times he homered. But, you had Andujar. He got a big double. And, Harris got 2 runs batted in. Good for him. Hopefully he's starting to hit. Nice to see him coming back up. But let's be honest. This was the day of Joey Estes. I mean, how great was Joey Estes today? I have to admit, I get frustrated when pitchers don't go 9 when they clearly could. I love a complete game. Maybe I'm old school that way, but also I'm weird. I also like a good bullpen. Maybe I like a pitcher to be relieved when they need relief. It is an old school concept. You can like two different things, by the way. I like a good bullpen game. I like a good, smart use of the bullpen. I also like a complete game. I like ice cream. I like sushi. I like the movie Airplane. I like the Iron Man. And I like the movie Citizen Kane. You can like different things. I like the DH and I like pitchers hitting. You see, you can enjoy more than one thing in life. I like Star Wars and Star Trek. Do you need more examples? But what I love is relief pitching. They used to be the firemen. You'd be the fireman of the year. Raleigh Fingers would be the fireman of the year. And what that meant was they came in to put out a fire, not necessarily put in because the data shows at this moment you take the pitcher out. I love it when a pitcher is doing very well and you're like, well, why are we taking him out? Why are we pulling a Blake Snell in the 2020 World Series when over-reliance on analytics literally cost the Rays Game 6, the clinching game of the World Series? That's not an opinion. They pulled a guy out while he was throwing a masterpiece in the World Series and brought in a gassed reliever because the spreadsheet said so. And you may note the Rays do not have a World Series title. So when you see a game like this where Estes is not only dealing, but he's also not throwing a lot of pitches. Keep this in mind. He finished with 9 innings, no runs, ergo a complete game shutout for his third win of the year, which lowered his ERA to 4.39. He allowed 5 hits. But here's what I find interesting. He walked 1 and he struck out 4. Now, a lot of times when you see a pitcher have, 10, 12, 13 strikeouts in the game, it's a super sexy stat when it happens. And say that super sexy stat, say that 5 times fast. But it also does run up the pitch count. It does, because if you're walking a bunch of batters, you will have thrown them at least 4 pitches. If you're striking out a bunch of batters, you will have thrown them at least 3 pitches. But Estes got out of a lot of innings in today's game where it was pretty quick, pretty effective use of pitches. He threw a complete game and did so in 92 pitches. 92 pitches. We've seen some A's pitchers throw 92 pitches in the first 3 innings this year. He was that effective. And it's a beautiful thing for a couple reasons. First of all, the A's win against the Angels, and I have this wild pipe dream of the A's finishing ahead of the Angels. And after the Angels swept the A's last week, it's nice to see them dust themselves off and say, all right, now let's have they have the opportunity of returning the favor. And we'll get to that in the next part of the segment. The other nice thing is, I've said you got to use Miller when you've got a lead. Well, they didn't have to today. They didn't have to. And after Miller didn't look so great today, and I don't know if you're familiar with what it's like right now in California, it is 103 degrees Celsius outside. It's hot. I'm a native New Englander. As we would say in the suburbs of Boston, it's wicked hot. And, good for Estes for going 9. But now you also know you have a completely rested and ready bullpen tomorrow, and the temperature is going to be a little more reasonable. The A's are going to be playing the Angels. Is it an afternoon game? Yeah, an afternoon game with a completely rested and ready bullpen and playing with house money because they've already won this. They've won the series. And there's a couple elements of the game that happened today that I don't know. It's given me that little boost of positivity as we're starting this new month. And maybe, just maybe, in the final 3 months of the history of the Oakland A's, there could be a sense of, if nothing else, spoiler optimism. All right, let's hear from our friends over at Ibotta. Hey, are you using Ibotta? Do you even know what Ibotta is? Let me give you a sense, because we're all going shopping now. In fact, I went to do a whole bunch of shopping just today. I did get some stuff. We're having a barbecue here on the 4th. I bought my sons a couple of pairs of shorts because they're walking around in long pants, and I got to do some groceries. And we got to do a lot of shopping. But do you know what? By using Ibotta, I can get cash back on my purchases when I stock up on all the things we need here for the 4th of July. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn hundreds of items from groceries, beauty supplies, clothes, even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That's a specific number. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, or maybe that flight that you want to buy. That could even buy a hot dog, a drink, and maybe even a souvenir at a baseball game. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you can earn cash back that you can withdraw right to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app and upload your receipt, and voila, the money is all yours. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you go to the register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Ibotta. Let's save some money. Hey, where's your go-to place for all your sports news and sports takes and sports information? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you to bring you the biggest stories in all of sports. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Hey, the latest episode, guess who's on it? Your pal Sully. I appeared in the latest episode of Locked On Sports Today. Had a lot of fun talking with Nick about the state of baseball right around the 4th of July. Let's just talk a little bit more about this game, because one of the things I liked about the game, other than the fact, as I said, the A's were playing like their head was in the game. The A's were going first to third when they need to. They were getting the hits when they need to. They weren't just relying on the long ball. And you saw that up and down the lineup. I mean, Rooker wound up having a 3-hit game, and not all of them were homers. A couple were bleeders. And Geloff got a hit and scored a run. Butler got a hit and made a terrific catch against the wall. It gives you that sense. I hope one of the things that the A's can do, other than I would love if they finished ahead of the Angels. That may or may not happen. I'd like to have them avoid losing 100 games, but I also would like to see them play some spoiler roles. Show, hey, you're not going to just push us over. They're going to be done with the Angels tomorrow afternoon. And whether they win or they lose, they've won the series. And that's pretty cool. But coming up next are the Baltimore Orioles. The Baltimore Orioles are one of the elite teams in baseball. They have images of winning the American League pennant and maybe even the World Series dancing in their head right now. They've made moves, including the Burns trade, that they want to build upon last year, where they won 100 games, but were out of the playoffs before you could say Nathan Eovaldi. So you look at this A's team, and you'd like to see them not be the team that people circle on their calendar. The A's have nothing to lose at this point. Everyone expects them to lose 110 games. But they have players on their team, and A's fans come see them for the next few weeks before they just start trading away all the players. But let's show a little bit of, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, pride. They showed pride today. They showed pride today by getting the hits, by playing smart. And you saw the Angels were on their heels for most of the game. The Angels just, they didn't look good. And, Zach Neto had bobbled a ground ball and that, went for an infield single. But, you don't always see the results of the defense by what's an error, what's not an error. And you saw what also happened because Neto juggled the ball. Geloff made it to first, which meant what? He was hustling. Wait for the other team to make a mental mistake or a physical mistake for that matter. Davis Daniel got a comeback, or it looked like it was going to be a double play to end the inning. You thought it, I thought it. But then he threw it past the second baseman, and next thing you know, the rally began. And all these sort of little things like that will add up. These are the things you have to do when you're not relying on the home run to save you each and every time. Keep playing like this. Because here's the deal, and this should be something the A's should be drilling into themselves. Did that sentence make sense? Maybe it didn't. There are other teams are going to be better than the A's. I think most teams not called the White Sox are going to be better than the A's. But it doesn't mean you have a high payroll if you throw to the right base. It doesn't mean you're going to have a high payroll if you know what you're going to do and are prepared for every play. It doesn't mean you need a high payroll to not swing at bad pitches, not get your head out of the game, and not hustling to first base. The A's are going to lose games because other teams are more talented than them. That is true. But nobody should ever beat the A's because someone outthought them or out-hustled them or had their head in the game more. They don't have the payroll that the Yankees or the Orioles or some of these other teams have, but it doesn't mean that they can't always be focused on the game, focused on the play. Don't make the dumb mental mistake that takes you out of it. If you're beaten by a team because they're better than you, fine, but don't ever be out-hustled. And that should be the key for them playing at the top of their game. Last segment, I want to talk about a 4th of July game from a much better year in A's history, and one that is worth remembering for the cast of characters and just how wild it was. Hey, this episode of Locked On A's is brought to you by our good friends over at Booking.com, or as I call it, Booking.yeah. A lot of people love to take baseball trips. My TA, Jessica, just went to a game at Oracle Park and at Oakland. She lives in Los Angeles. I went on a big baseball trip earlier this year. I went to see games in Buffalo, Syracuse, and I went all the way to Cooperstown and had a great time. But each time I stayed in a different hotel, and it was great because I used Booking.com. I found a terrific downtown apartment in the city of Buffalo. Buffalo's a really nice city, by the way. I then got a really nice, safe place nearby the campus in Syracuse, and then a fabulous bed and breakfast, just walking distance to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Got them all through Booking.com. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the United States. Your summer travel plans will be all locked in this season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today at Booking.com on the site or use the Booking.com app. That's Booking.com. Booking.yeah. But you know what? I needed to just, I needed tickets too. And my TA, Jessica, needed tickets. I needed tickets for the minor league games I went to. She needed tickets for the Giants game and the A's game. Go to Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from the seats, you can get their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying baseball tickets. And it also caters exactly to what you want. I have a section of the stadium that I like to sit in. I don't like to sit in the upper deck. I don't like to sit field level. I like that middle deck. I think that's the best view. If I'm sitting behind home plate, but a little bit up the first base line, that's my favorite view of the game. And so what do? I go to Zone Deals. I say, this is the section I want to sit in, and they find me the best deal from within that zone. You get flash deals. You get even more exclusive in-app deals and select seats ahead of the game. And then you get the seat views. You get a panoramic view from the seat. Hey, I like that view. Boom. You get the game time ticket coverage, which is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing agency. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets. The lowest prices. Do you know what they are? I'll tell you exactly what they are. They are guaranteed. Hey, this is a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national streaming sports 24/7 channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. Hey, it's the 4th of July. Have a happy 4th of July, everybody. Going back to a better year for the A's, which was 1988. It was clear very early in 1988 that things were just firing on all cylinders for the A's. And they were already a 51-win team when they went to see Cleveland, who at that time, Cleveland had a winning record. 20,000 fans were at the huge mistake by the lake in Cleveland. And you take a look at who the A's were playing. The A's were playing Cleveland. Were leading off Carney Lansford. Then Luis Polonia, Jose Canseco was the DH. Mark McGuire was at first. Ron Hassey was the catcher. Dave Henderson was in center. They started Stan Javier in right field, and we'll find out soon that was a good thing. Glenn Hubbard was the second baseman, and Walter Weiss was the catcher. The starting pitcher for the A's was Bob Welch. Meanwhile, the starting pitcher for Cleveland was the knuckleballer Tom Candiotti, and some big stars were on that Cleveland team. Julio Franco was the leadoff hitter. Joe Carter was there. Mel Hall, who wound up being a questionable person later. Corey Snyder was one of the great prospects of the Cleveland Indians at that time. You had some other players you associate with other teams, like Willie Upshaw, who's a star for many, many of the Toronto Blue Jays teams. And Ron Kittle, a beloved Chicago White Sox star, was there. And Tom Candiotti and Bob Welch locked antlers. Both were workhorses. Welch was a great pitcher with the Dodgers and would eventually win a Cy Young with the A's. Welch got into trouble in the first inning, but managed to wiggle his way out of it. Tom Candiotti was knuckleball, got through stuff. But eventually, Willie Upshaw got a single off of Welch to give the Cleveland Indians a 1-0 lead. And then back-to-back singles by Lansford and Polonia gave the A's the lead, and they kept a 2-1 lead until the bottom of the 8th. And again, this is La Russa, who reinvented the bullpen, but at this point, he kept Bob Welch there with 2 outs in the 8th, but a single by Joe Carter allowed tied the game as Andy Allenson, the catcher, scored. Joe Carter advanced to second on an error by Dave Henderson. So now it's tied 2-2, and with a runner on first and 2 outs and the winning run on base, they kept Bob Welch in the game, and he got a big ground out from the last 2 Cleveland hitters to send it into extra innings. Some more memorable names, including the late Doug Jones, who would go on to go to many All-Star game appearances. The late Jim Corsi finally replaced Bob Welch, and they all, they locked antlers into extra innings. The Cleveland got the winning run in the scoring position in the 11th, couldn't score. The A's got 2 on and 1 out in the top of the 12th, couldn't score when Jose Canseco lined out. In the bottom of the 12th, the Cleveland wound up rallying. They put 2 runners on and 1 out, but Greg Catteray came in and wiggled out of the rally there. On the bottom of the 14th, Greg Catteray loaded the bases, but he struck out the last 2 batters, went into the 15th. And finally, in the 16th inning, against Brad Havens, Mark McGwire homered, and with 2 outs, Stan Javier homered. Just so you know, both Carney Lansford and Stan Javier collected 4 hits that day. So it was a pretty smart to put Canseco in the DH spot. And guess what? Even though they're in the 16th inning, do you know who was still available? Dennis Eckersley. Tony La Russa had the discipline to not use Eckersley, despite all those times when every pitch that Greg Catteray threw could have ended the game. Eckersley struck out Domingo Ramos, got a pop-up from Jay Bell, and then struck out the final batter swinging. And who was the final batter on the 16th inning of the July 4th game in Cleveland? Ron Washington, currently the manager of the Angels. And here's the thing that I find very funny. There was a 16-inning marathon that July 4th in Cleveland in 1988. The next day, they had to play a doubleheader. Baseball can be kind of cruel. But no doubleheader tomorrow, but we'll see if the A's can complete the sweep. So follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Celebrating that rarest things of this year, which is a perfectly executed A's win. This has been Locked On A's for the 4th of July. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please be careful out there and call me Sully.